It's time to laugh, learn, and take your photography to the next level with your favorite cowgirls with cameras, Cara, Kim, and Phyllis.
Welcome to the Cowgirls with Cameras podcast. I'm Kim with Kim Beer Photography and Be More Business.
I'm Cara with Fast Horse Photography.
And I am Phyllis with Phyllis Burchett Photo. Good afternoon, y'all.
Hi.
I know this is a rare afternoon recording. This may go really well, or it may dive into really bizarre territory.
You know what? Our history of afternoon recordings is typically not great, so we'll see how we do. We don't have a great track record with A, staying on track, and B, being fully conscious for the experience.
I feel like it's already gone off track a little bit. So
dang it!
Well,
that happened too fast.
It does go off track on a regular basis. Oh, goodness. So what have you all been up to the last few weeks? It's been a while since we've recorded, actually. It feels like forever.
Well, I can start. I've been mothering baby birds at my office store.
Yes, and they graduated.
So when we
It's
left for Art of the Cowgirl, I had right on my office door. So you guys have both been in my studio. So I have a wreath on the door and it's just right there. So some birds made a nest in the wreath, and right before we left for Art of the Cowgirl, they laid their eggs. And a couple days after we got back from Art of the Cowgirl, they hatched. And they were little tiny babies. When they were born, all four of them hatched. They were the size of maybe a nickel. And then they continued to just double in size every day. And the day before yesterday, they left the nest and they were fledgling. And it has been a surprisingly amazing experience being able to just open my office door and peek in their little nest and check on them. And then I found myself really sad yesterday. I'm staring at an empty nest now, and I'm trying to decide if I should go ahead and take the wreath down and get rid of the nest. And then I have to remember to put it back up next year so hopefully I get another nest.
some birds will fledge more than one, what do you call it, group?
Really? Do you
Yeah,
think I should keep the nest up?
I would leave it. I don't know. Or maybe take the nest down and just leave the wreath up, and maybe they'll build another one. I mean, it's hard to say.
I'd leave their nest. That's a lot of work to have to do.
I know our bluebirds, I've had them do three, have babies 3 times in one bluebird house.
Are you serious? So I didn't think about that. I didn't know that was a thing. I was thinking I could get id of the fall wreath and put up a summer one.
You could put
Thank
up
goodness
a summer...
they didn't nest during Christmas. I'd have Santa Claus on the wall all year.
I was going to say, wait a minute. What is your fall wreath still doing up for spring?
Well,
anyway?
I was going to take it down, but then they started building a nest in it, so I left it. So I've still got pumpkins on my office door.
So you never put up a Christmas wreath? I mean, we had another season in between fall and spring.
Yeah, so I had Christmas up, and then I took Christmas down, and then right after Christmas, I went ahead and put the fallish one back up.
Okay.
Because maybe my mistake. It felt too early for a spring door wreath, but yet you can't do Christmas straight into spring. You got to have something for the middle. And my choice was to go back to the pretty fall colors.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, the good thing is this is preparing you for that day when you and Ed will have an empty nest.
I'm not going to handle it well if I can't handle the baby birds. So the day that they were fledglings, they were all 4 out hopping around, and there was a feral cat in the yard trying to catch them.
The exact metaphor I was going for. Yeah, he's going to be out chasing the feral cats away from me.
So I was chasing the feral cat out of the yard, and the babies were fluttering up trying to get on the palm fronds and fluttering to try to get in the bamboo. And oh my God, it was heart stopping. So... But smartest baby birds I've ever seen. They didn't make a peep. And every time I looked at them, they just stared at me with their little angry faces. It was amazing.
Well, you've been mothering birds, and I've been mothering birds. I have 26 baby chickens in my makeshift brooder in my dining room. So yeah, nobody judge me for having a brooder in my dining room. We don't eat in there.
I just thought that's where you kept brooders.
Well, I guess technically, although I really never thought of it as mothering birds, as I do have I do have a Carolina wren and a phoebe nesting on my front porch, but I don't really
A-
consider it that I'm mothering them.
Mother-
So
Well, no, you probably don't have like easy access to like look in their nest all the like me, it's like I have to tell people, please close the door gently or you'll jar the babies. Or, don't blow the leaf blower too much near the door or you'll blow them out of the nest. I'm mothering them.
okay.
I'm a
And I'm
I'm like a
literally mothering
caretaker.
the chickens.
Yeah,
Yes,
you're
yeah,
literally mothering the
yeah.
chickens, and I'm kind of like the bird's aunt. Their aunt. I'm their aunt.
You're their keeper.
Yeah, I'm like I'm just a
Their
helper.
guardian. Their
I'm a helper.
guardian.
Mhm.
You're their fairy godmother.
There you go.
Unfortunately for my world, I'm cleaning up poopy butts, so I really am serving into the mother job.
Yeah, baby chickens are hard. No, thank
I
you.
had a couple of cases of poopy butt over the last couple of days, so we've had
Aw.
to soak some bottoms.
Only
to
chicken
get
people
them
know what that
done.
is.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no. I know what it is.
Yeah, foals get it too.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
know what it
true.
is.
That's true.
Oh
They
yeah.
definitely get the poopy butt. So do baby
Oh.
goats. Well, I think every baby gets
Yeah,
a
every
poopy
baby
butt.
gets scours and stuff. So
All
I'm
right.
glad. Speaking of birds, our hummingbirds are back, so that's exciting.
Spring has sprung.
Yes, it
Spring
has.
has
Yes,
sprung.
yes.
So, interestingly enough, so just to keep us on track, because we're going to be here all day talking about spring if we're not careful.
Yeah, we could just end the podcast episode when we're done talking about birds.
Well,
That works-
if
that
this
works
was
for
a
me.
bird photographing podcast, that would be okay. But it is about cowgirls and horses and the Western lifestyle, and it happens today to be focused on something I think that I personally have always needed a lot of practice around, which is boundaries. So, what we kind of are talking about over this month's episodes of April is to talk about, like the things in your business that you need to be accountable for. And this first episode is going to be around setting the accountability for people that are outside of you. And so that generally means good boundaries. And our next episode is going to focus on our own self accountability. So we're kind of splitting this topic up into two different episodes. But I know for me, as a photographer, I have caved on my boundaries so many times and almost to a time regretted it. So I think this is a very timely episode for a lot of people, and this is not just about business. It is about all the types of things, because when you have the big fancy camera and you start to show off your work, whether it's just to friends and on social media or whether it's to clients, suddenly there's lots of opportunities that come out of the woodwork. So, and you need to be clear around those boundaries. So, Phyllis is going to kick us off with talking about how to define your boundaries. So, what you will and will not do. And then Cara is going to continue the conversation, sharing a little bit about what she's learned about setting boundaries. Also goes along with the value conversation, by the way. So, that's why I mucked that up. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how to enforce them and still feel good about yourself. Phyllis, you ready?
Oh, no.
Take it away, Phyllis.
Phyllis is like, I don't like going first. This going first thing is not for.
And I guess this topic this week is a little too close for me. Too close. I don't know. It just really
Well,
it really
hits home a little bit.
It hits home pretty hard right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm having a little issues with defining my already set boundaries. So
Well, hopefully,
they-
Phyllis, you'll get something out of this episode that you'll be able to like really put to work. When
I
we're
hope
done.
I hope so too, Cara. That would be lovely. It's funny though how you set boundaries for yourself and your business, and then life changes, and you're going along real smooth and everything was great, and then something happens and you realize you need to make more money, and so some of those boundaries have to change. And
I
But
feel like she's talking about stripping or something. Like,
Yeah, that sounds like
and then
really.
you have to make some extra money, and the next thing you know, you're working the pole at
Yes.
it's
the
the
club down the street.
well, we won't get into that because we know who I work for
We
part
know
time.
who you work for.
We need the podcast editor to play a little snippet of the Pink Pony Club right here. Oh goodness, that is too funny.
Anyway,
Let's-
continue, Phyllis.
Let's get serious here. Running a business with boundaries, and I'm gonna include hobbyists as well, because I think since sometimes even more so, because you're gonna have people that think just because you love what you do and you're passionate about it that they can push your buttons even more and push your boundaries. And I think understanding the value of your time and skill, even if photography is just a passion for you and you're not supposedly making money off of it, doesn't really mean you should work for free or that your work is free. I think as a solo entrepreneur, all of us know it's important to remember that we should be running our businesses. Our business does not run us. Setting boundaries will be the best thing you can do for your business and your sanity. Oh gosh, I need that sanity right now. um, Let's identify how you want to do business, then figure out what your workflow looks like so you can set your boundaries. It's key to know your own limits before you can communicate them to others. What hours do you want to work? Do you want to have weekends off? Are there particular jobs or clients you don't want to work with? Are there any jobs you might accept without pay? All of these are things you need to think about as far as setting your boundaries. Even something as simple as business hours can be boundaries. Clients can't respect boundaries if they don't know or that they don't know about. So be clear with your boundaries. Let them know your preferred. For me, this is a big one: is let them know your preferred method of communication, and also your hours of operation. You don't want somebody calling you at 10 o'clock at night, which does happen a lot. Walk clients through what happens after they book so that they know exactly what to expect. Your contract isn't just a legal document to keep you out of business jail. It's also a great way you can set boundaries. A clear message of your boundaries can be included in your contracts. Turnaround time for your galleries, how many edits or revisions are included, when and how payments are due. Rescheduling or cancellation policies, last minute requests, excessive editing, all of these are boundaries that you need to include in your contracts. I think, and I'm guilty for this too, because I get a contract, and if it's somebody I trust, I just sign it. And most people don't really bother reading all the details. So I think a good practice can be to break down a few of the select clauses from your contract and highlight them in an email. I don't think there's any time you can over communicate. I think all of these things is really important to make sure that your client knows, even though they may have said they read the contract, they probably didn't read all the fine details. I think Cara and I both got our contracts from the contract shop. I think that's
Yep.
where you got yours too, right?
Yeah.
It can be a little pricey, but it's very detailed. It's very worth it. And they do run a lot of sales. So it's just thecontractshop.com. And they have one specifically for equine photography. They have all kinds of great contracts to check out. Another one for me for boundaries is to own your calendar. Just because you're free, when I say free, just because you're not doing something and it shows you as free doesn't mean you're available. Schedule editing days in advance, have set specific days and times for client calls, blackout weekends and time off, schedule your personal time in advance. This way, you're the one controlling your schedule instead of letting it control you. I think most clients really appreciate structure. It makes you look more professional and organized too. I personally like to communicate through email. This way I have a paper trail. And I think that's really important for protecting myself and your client from any miscommunication that should come up. I do like to hop on a call with my clients, but a follow up with notes is always good to have. That way you can refer back to that should something come up that they disagree with. If a client messages me through Facebook or Facebook Messenger or Instagram, I ask them to send me an email, to redirect that through email. While I don't personally use one now, but I think one of the best ways to stay organized and to set boundaries with clients is by using a CRM. And these two girls can help you with that way more than me. I don't do that anymore. So, um, setting oh gosh, that's a boundary I have, isn't it? I
There
don't do
you
that
go.
anymore. Setting boundaries isn't just about protecting your time. It's also about setting your business up for long-term success. By defining how you want to work, you create a stress-free experience for not only you, but for your clients. And you had asked me about a talking point. Have you ever struggled with setting a boundary? What finally made you? I think we should all answer this one. Have you ever struggled with setting a boundary? What finally made you realize you needed one? Long time ago, I used to shoot. I wouldn't say that I did them like you did, Kim, but I did shoot weddings on occasion. And it wasn't really something I was crazy about doing. I did like the creativity part of it. And the money was really hard to turn down. Eventually, I would tell people that, well, I don't really do weddings, but they still ask repeatedly. And so I'd submit what I thought was something a really high quote to them, thinking, oh, they're not going to take that they'll find somebody less expensive. But that didn't work either because it was mostly all equine related clients that I was shooting weddings for. So it was people that I had an already somewhat of a relationship with. And a lot of them were outdoor weddings and they knew I was comfortable with doing that. So they didn't care. Which was great. I made good money, but it just really, when I finally realized it wasn't something I really wanted to do, that I was going to have to learn how to say no and not beat around the bush. So that was a big boundary setting thing for me. That's one thing I don't do is weddings. What about you two?
So for me, my poison pill with with photography and boundaries is nonprofits. I will get a nonprofit can pull on my
Mm.
heartstrings so fast.
I'm a sucker for
And
nonprofits.
yeah, and what ends up happening is many times because they don't have a photographer who's willing to volunteer for them and they end up just running me ragged. I did photos for a dog shelter in Kansas City and I volunteered to come take a few photos. And I ended up photographing over 1,000 homeless dogs in a year.
Mhm. Well,
And that and at first that wasn't too bad, right? So here's where the boundary problem came in. I would go once a week to the shelter, the handlers would bring out the dogs and I would photograph them. And I did it the way I wanted to do it and it was working fine. And then another photographer came along and volunteered alongside me and then that photographer started creating a lot of rules. And those rules included very specific rules about all of the different shots that they wanted of the dogs and that they had to be turned in by a very specific time. And I mean, it ended up going from I could spend an afternoon at the shelter helping them out with some photographs and handing them over the photos that they could put on their website to a 2-day editing job, like in organizing the images. And I was like, this is just too much for me. I mean, I can't make this my full-time job. And so I had to set a pretty clear boundary that was really hard for me. But I have gotten myself into that particular dilemma more than one time. And I love so many of the things that people do. And here's the thing that gets me for most of the time, at least that one was with animals. I have photographed charity golf tournaments. I have photographed, Dancing with the Stars here in Kansas City, which was fun, by the way, but it's not in my wheelhouse, right? I'm not a
yeah.
walk around in formal clothes and take, society pictures kind of photographer. I'm a let's go out behind the barn and take a photo of your horse photographer. So, yeah, I mean, I've struggled with that. I don't do any of those anymore. Just FYI.
Well, I'm going to help you guys out on my section with some words to use, but I will tell you the thing that tends to come up for me a lot with boundaries is scope of work type stuff. So what I'll have happen is I'll have a shoot planned. We will have agreed to what we're photographing, and then I get on site and there's like extended family there. Oh, could you just while you're here get a couple family portraits of these random people that we've never talked about until the day of the session, or the barn owner wants to hop into some pictures, or that sort of thing that really wasn't included in any of our creative consults. And I have a really hard time on the spot when I'm standing there with the camera in my hand setting that boundary. So, and just being like, well, that really was not in the scope of work and we need to move on. So, that's a real struggle. So, one of the things that I personally have learned about boundaries is that if I'm not setting them, that someone else is setting them for me. And I think about that a lot when I don't set boundaries and I start to have resentment, because the number one way that I can tell that a boundary is being crossed for me is I start to feel resentful about the situation, or resentful about the work, or resentful about the job, resentful towards the client, whatever that may look like. So as soon as I start to feel those feelings of resentment, I know that there's a boundary issue there that I'm letting slide. And I need to figure out what that is and kind of rein it in. So, one of the things that's been helpful for me over the years is practicing like how to say no, and to do it in a way that is both professional and still kind and respects my boundaries. So, I feel like I have to also be able to do that like without feeling super guilty and feeling awkward. So, while I still struggle to do that on the spot at a shoot, I've gotten really good about doing it during inquiries, business inquiries, during creative consults, and just in communication in general with my clients. So I have found that if I actually think about the words I'm going to say and kind of prepare for any situation, that I feel a lot more confident in that. I recently, in our Cowgirls with Cameras community, which I know several people who are listening have already jumped into the community and have joined and have been participating over there, they have seen that I put in a document that is different scenarios that photographers come into that has to do with how do you set those boundaries? How do you say no in a way that feels professional and still feels kind? So anyway, a couple words that I just want to go through some of the ways that I do this. One of the things that I will say is through I'll redirect, and I might say something like, I totally understand why this is important to you, but I'm not able to take on that job right now. Um, I feel like I like that one because I'm not just slamming a door in their face and being like, "Nope, this job is not for me." I'm saying it in a way that just feels better. So I feel like we, as the photographer, we have to choose how we put that energy out into the world and how we put it out into this situation. I also like to think about reframing the no in terms of more like a self respect issue and not just rejection. So saying no protects your time. It's going to protect my family time. It's going to protect my creative energy. And all of us out there, it's going to protect our clients who are paying for our time and our attention already. So if someone, for example, is asking you to work for free, being able to say no and being comfortable setting that boundary is really respecting those people who have chosen to pay to work with you, and they really need your time and energy. And then a few more of my favorite no phrases that I have practiced, that I do practice ahead of time, are I'm sorry, I'm currently all booked out at the moment, but I appreciate you thinking of me. Not referring them to someone else. I'm not doing anything other than saying, thank you for thinking of me, but I'm currently booked. You can also say something along the lines of, that's outside of the type of photography that I offer, but you know what? I'm cheering you on. It sounds like an awesome project. And you're still doing it professionally and you're still being kind. You can also say something along the lines of, you know what? I'm not the best fit for that, but here's someone who might be. And if it's a job you don't want, refer it to someone who might want it. I guarantee if you go on any Facebook group right now, there's a photographer willing to work for next to nothing and will be happy to take that job. So just, it's not the best fit for me, but here's someone who might be a good fit. And boundaries can feel super awkward at first. They're one of those things that, you know, it can be a real struggle for people, especially when they're really awkward about having to say no to people. So I like to think about this in terms of, you know what, there were other things in my business, for example, talking about my pricing or literally telling people what I do as an equine photographer that at one point in time felt awkward and made me nervous. So it's just like any other thing, you have to stretch that muscle and learn how to do it in your photography. A couple things, and I'm not going to go into these too deeply because Phyllis mentioned them to some extent. That piece that she mentioned about setting expectations really early in your relationship to avoid uncomfortable situations down the line, like pricing's a big one. Don't wait for someone to ask about your pricing. You make sure your process includes lots of ways that you talk about pricing from your very first communication. So, for example, my clients are exposed to my pricing 4 to 5 times prior to ever viewing and ordering images from me. And that is in multiple ways. They hear it, they see it, they touch it, they get it in an email, get it in many different ways. And that transparency is going to build trust and it's going to weed out those people who are just not aligned for you. Another thing that Phyllis briefly touched on was the contracts, and I completely agree with how important it is to have a contract. You think of your contract as just a boundary loving buddy that's going to outline exactly what's included, when and how it's to be done, and try to stick to what you say you're going to do in your contract. That gives consistency for your client. It is professional. And if you have to make a change to that, make sure that it's in writing somewhere. Um, then I usually encourage people to send like a friendly email or a recap before a session that just includes some of those really important details in the contract, like timing, rescheduling, late arrivals, because those types of things are boundaries. If you have a client that and you've told them that the session's going to start at 7 a.m. and then they don't show up until 9 a.m., like that's a boundary. Are you supposed to sit there for 2 hours? I don't think so. So thinking about those types of situations. Um, let's see. And then there's going to be times when you are asked to work for free or have discounted work. And there's going to be times when you want to say yes. And that's okay too. It If it is something that just genuinely lights you up inside, maybe it's something that builds your portfolio in a really strategic way, and you're choosing to do that work freely and not out of some kind of icky feeling pressure, then do the job. There's I think we've done a whole episode on working for free, so I'm not gonna go down this because I don't believe you ever have to work completely for free. There's a lot of different ways that you can get paid in quotation marks. But, if it's a job that you wanna do and you wanna work for free, then do it. But it's okay to say no too. So you can say no when that job is gonna drain you, when it's gonna delay you getting paid for actual work that you're doing that you're supposed to get paid for, or the thing that I mentioned earlier, when it gives you that icky, resentful feeling. And like I said, that's my number one sign that a boundary is being pushed. So sometimes you're gonna have friends and family with that friends and family discount expectation that pops up. This comes up in my life all the time. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that because there's something about when you have a camera and you are the photographer in the family that it doesn't matter how niche you are, you still get asked to photograph every family wedding, every reunion, every birthday. And it's like they don't see your work sometimes as, no, this is my job. Like, if you're a nurse, I don't ask you to like give me all my vaccinations at home when I come over to the family reunion. It's like we don't expect that in any other field. So I just think that's really important that you can start thinking about how to navigate that because most of us are probably getting hit up for that kind of thing. So I think it's okay to go ahead and acknowledge the relationship, but still hold the line. It's okay to say something like, I love you and I want to give you the same amazing experience as all my clients get. Here's my pricing and here's what's included. Or offer something non disruptive to your process, like, I'm not offering any discounts, but I can give you like early booking access so you get a primo date, or I could give you a small print credit as a gift from me to you. So thinking about ways like alternatives to completely working for free. And I'm sure you guys can come up with your own, but those were a couple that I was thinking of. And then the last thing I'm going to say, the power of that's not something I offer, but here's what I can do can be really huge. And this is one of my favorite phrases, that's not something I offer, but here's what I can do, because it keeps the door open to the relationship or future work without sacrificing your boundaries. So saying something like, that's not something I offer, but I'd be happy to create a custom bundle instead. So maybe they're asking for some big discount, or maybe they're asking for something outside of the scope of your work. What can you do? You still want to work with them, but what can you do? I'm not doing that, but what can you do? Another thing that you may hear is, I don't photograph weddings, but I do offer equestrian engagement sessions. So you're still offering something. You're not shooting a wedding, but you'll be happy to shoot her in that pretty dress, right? With a horse. So anyway, this makes you sound generous. It makes you sound flexible, but you're still in control. And the bonus is it eliminates that awkwardness because you're still offering a solution, not just shutting something down. So what do you guys think about that? I don't have any talking point like Phyllis did, but I like the power of having the words and practicing the words coming out of your mouth and then kind of having that ready to go. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes these inquiries come in and they're in email form. And it's really nice to just have a go to response that feels good that you can jump right into.
So you mentioned practice, and that's one of the things that I wanted to talk
Uh huh.
about in being good at enforcing your boundaries. So many times I think we set a boundary and then we expect ourselves to be able to enforce it. And then we really kick ourselves when we don't, or
Yeah.
we cave, or the pressure gets to be too much. But one of my bigger questions is do have you practiced it? Like, you can't expect yourself to be perfect at something that you haven't put practice into.
Yes.
And boundary setting is one of those things. And it gets so much more complicated. I mean, it sounds so easy. And I love that you gave phrases, Kara, because I think that's something that so many people struggle with. It's
There's a
like,
ton more in our
how do
community.
I say this? How do I say this? Like, how do I say it and not come off as a bitch or not come off as rude, or I still want to be respected. And when it comes to your family, sometimes there's all kinds of extra things that come along with that. But the truth is that we have to sit and look at what is our relationship with boundaries anyway? Because it's easy to say, put it in a contract. And I'm one of those people who have had signed contracts where it's gotten completely off of the rails, and it's my own trauma that got into the way of me enforcing it. So, the very first question when people say, how do you enforce boundaries well, is I'm going to ask you, what have you learned about boundaries in your life? What did your parents teach you? So many people in the world, I watched my mother let her boundaries get crossed all of the time, and she would have to get pushed into a corner before she would kind of come back at people, right? So your parents teach you what boundaries are like, or how to participate in any kind of boundary situation that comes up. And also our schools teach us that, and our teachers teach us what boundaries are and how to respect them. And I think modern schools do a much better job of that than the school that I went to. But you have to look at your own personal experience. What did you learn? How have you learned to be around boundaries? My next question would be to consider is like, how well do you respect other people's boundaries? That sometimes comes into play, right? Sometimes if you don't respect other people's boundaries, it's easy for you to maybe let your boundaries slide as well. So, or vice versa of that. So when you look at the world and you say, okay, well, all of this sounds great, and I have those words that Kara gave me, and I have the bullet points that Phyllis lined out, and I know where I should be setting my boundaries, but I just don't darn do it. It's not a character flaw. I wanna reiterate that to the nth degree. You're not a pushover, you're not a doormat, you're not you don't allow this to happen. Boundaries do not get blown by with you without reason, okay? So, usually, if you're waffling around boundaries, you've got to do a little bit of inner work to find out why. Like, how is that happening, and how is it showing up in your life? And it's going to usually relate back to something in your past. And a lot of times I don't mind to trounce on the childhood trauma, but our parents are the people who teach us this first. And so if there were boundary issues in your family, that's going to be a problem. And then you add a double dip of that when you have to set boundaries around your photography with your family members. Now you're like majorly into the pool of it. Um As far as being able to enforce boundaries without burning bridges, I think that the best way to really set yourself up for success with that is to be very clear with yourself. Like, so recently we had a situation here where there was I went to a location where I was the published boundaries were very different than what the actual boundaries were. And that is hard for the person who's on the other end. Because if you are a good boundary follower, you want to follow the very specific boundaries. But if you are somebody who likes to kind of skirt around the boundaries, and there are a lot of people who like to do that, then you don't even know where you can skirt around them. So part of that is clarity, and clarity has to start with you first. You have to know what you need to put in the contract, and you need to know what you're willing to slide on and what you're not willing to slide on. Some businesses have really interesting return or refund policies that up front, they're very, very clear. Like there's no refunds or no returns, right? But then if you ask a few questions, they know how far they're willing to go, right? So for you as an individual, you've got to find out where are your limits because that's first. And then the second thing I recommend is that you be very clear. If it's a written boundary, enforce it. And my way of doing that without burning a bridge is, first of all, speak up before it gets blown away. Most people, just like horses, they will give you a hint when they're going to cross the boundary, right? I think of my son with our horses. He lets them cross boundaries I would not let them cross. So I have two very well trained geldings living out here that have been through some very professional training. And all it takes is a little bit of energetic, like, no, you're not going to do that. I mean, I don't even have to, I just have to lift my hand up. And they're like, okay, I won't do it. But with him, they will try to take the food bucket out of his hand because he doesn't enforce it. But they give him such clear signs. Like when they walk up, they stick their nose out, their ears aren't pinned, but they're back and their focus is on that bucket. And I can just look at what they're doing and how they're approaching me and with the energy. And I can be like, no, that's not how you come at me. You be respectful. Phyllis is over there like, I'd enforce it too. You've been run over by a few horses trying to get a bucket of food from you. It, they're both pretty nice geldings. I don't think they would hurt him, but still, I enforce the boundaries different. But I enforce the boundary before it becomes a problem. I don't wait until the horse has his head in the bucket to say, no, that's a boundary now we're not going to cross. When the horse is coming at me, I'm going to say, no, this is not, you're coming at me with the wrong energy, dude. Back up a little bit. And that's a metaphorical way that you can start to look at the things in your business and in your personal life when it comes to boundaries around your photography. When, okay, so here's a very clear one. You know that your sister's kid is getting ready to graduate high school and she has no horses, but you can, the hints will start coming, right? Like, do you do senior photos or, hints will start dropping. And if you want to set that boundary, now's the time to do it before expectations get too much, before the proverbial horse gets his head in the food bucket and it's 100 times harder to get it out. So once that you see that boundary starting to come at you and know it's going to get blown away, reiterate clearly, like Cara gave you language, but reiterate clearly what your boundary is, and then ask for a confirmation that they understand it. And I'll go back to the horse training example. I ask for that same thing from those geldings when I feed them. I'm like, no, you don't come out with me with that energy. And then I put the food out and then I stand there. And when they relax and quit pushing on my boundary, then I'll step back and they can walk up to their food buckets. It's the same thing with everything with people, right? Get the confirmation. They confirmed, hey, I understand and respect your boundary and I'm all good now. And we can all be happy and be friends. I hope the horse training example was okay.
We'll take it. I think it made sense.
I think it made sense to us, but we're all horse people, so we made
Well,
perfect
hopefully
sense.
a lot of horse people out here
Yeah.
listening to this who have had I just think of the horses with their heads in the buckets. I'm like, no, you boys need to stop that. It's, I don't think these two go that far, but they do definitely push into his personal space. It does. Occasionally, I take you out there and just stand with a lead rope and look at them, and they're like, Kim's out here. I gotta toe the line a little bit better than when she's not. So, yeah.
All right. All right. I think we've given folks a lot to think about. And for those of you that maybe need some more words to practice or want to look at some scenarios, other ways that you might need to, respectfully say no, check out our community, our Cowgirls with Cameras community. It's cowgirlswithcameras.community if you're not already there. There's a lot of opportunities there for people, and we'd love to see you over there. We're having a great time. We've got some pretty great active people in there right now, and it's just been a lot of fun. So
There's a whole discussion about driving going on today that is just like
yeah, it's pretty
hilarious.
funny. It's very funny. And I would also
Part of that is
encourage-
so untrue, though. Part of
well,
that.
they're going to have to go to the community and see it and find out if it's true or not. They can make their own opinions. And then the other thing I just want to mention, we currently got 3 spaces left for photographers who are thinking about joining us out in the world this for 2025. We have 3 spaces left at our Trappers Lake Lodge Equine Photography Adventure. That is just in the beautiful flat top wilderness, fall color, horses, cowboys, cowgirls, ranch dogs, you name it, it's there. And we've got 3 spaces left, and that's the only way at this point that you can join us. All of our other events are full. Hopefully by the time this episode comes out, there'll still be room for you if you're interested. So head over to cowgirlswithcameras.com, head to our events page and check it out. You can also find us online on Instagram and Facebook on social media at Cowgirls with Cameras.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Cowgirls with Cameras. Don't let the laughter and learning stop here. Join our community on social media and be sure to visit our website for more opportunities to fulfill your photography goals. Head to cowgirlswithcameras.com. That's cowgirlswithcameras.com. See you next time.